a Fury champion if it's left open. We'll have to see, though. So far, both of them make it through our first phase of bans. And, I mean, yeah, Ulk, it feels nice sometimes to be right. Immediate Gwen lock-in, and there's that Mbessa, like you mentioned. So we get a little bit of the new developments and the day one already in this first draft.
For sure. Wonder how much more we're going to be able to get from our two teams here. Gwen has been the breakout answer going into Mbessa, especially now with Renekton already taken away. Like you're saying, the Fury still on the table and definitely able to kind of get down and dirty. I think the fact that she has so much more gank assist does make her a little bit stronger. Waybo showing with the Mbessa, specifically I think the Varus allows for so much flexibility. They can go for a poke style composition or allow for Mbessa and Varus to play a front to back.
But here on the EDG side, this is a staple comp of the last couple of days. You talked about the Gwen, but we've seen a ton of Sejuani, Yone, Prio. So this should really enable Xiaohao to play aggressive early on. You get those extra melees. You bring in a lot more stuns. We'll see how aggressive the Sejuani becomes as we get a, I would argue, a new Xiaohu staple champion. This Aurora, one, he's played a ton of it already. Two, it wins a lot of the time, Hulk.
That's sure. You know, Aurora is a very strong champion. As we get through the second phase of bans, what I want to see from EDG is an AD carry that's not only going to be able to contest Varus on mid-wave, but also have a little bit more mobility. So Corki and Ezreal immediately come to mind for EDG. They are going for a composition with two very potent side laners in the Yone and the Gwen. With the added benefit of the Sejuani, I think what you just need is to make sure that your AD carry can be safe from what is an all-in burst potential from this Weibo squad. Aurora, Mbessa, say goodbye to your backline, you just jump right on through.
I'm very intrigued to see if we get maybe a Nocturne ban to go, just target Tian completely for that dive ability. There's a lot of good options. The Poppy, always a good pick into 3 champions already showing with dashes, so you can always take away that punishment. Wonder if this is the Nocturne, because I do think as much dive ability as Aurora and Mbessa provide, you kind of need that first fire starter type of champion that usually comes in the jungle. But it's never a bad thing to pick up one of the most powerful skirmishers in the game right now, so the Xin Zhao will be locked in there for Tian.
Yeah, I like the Xin Zhao a lot more. I think the fact that you have the Crescent Guard just allows you to sweep away all of your opponents, makes it so the 3 melees that we're seeing from EDG have a bit tougher time of actually getting in. I'm glad that On is kind of hovering some very fun champions on one of our older Draven aficionados. Don't know if it's exactly we're going to be seeing, but while Ziggs does have, I think, some of the ability to be safe, without the dash, you're really reliant on your satchel charge or an incoming Zhonya's. I think that the item slots might be a bit contested in this game, so we'll have to see as EDG are going to continue to round this out. Love the Leona for Wink. It definitely plays more into his style of being able to lead the team from the front.
Yeah, they've got a clear-cut objective through these fights. They can play reactionary to the dive potential, especially as Hong locks in that Rakan. So you got the, you're looking maybe what you get out of the Nocturne, you get now out of the Rakan here. Does have to be a bit slippery and is prone. As fun as Rakan can be to watch, you do have to be careful with timings because you are squishier than most of your other engaged support pairings. So we'll see if Hong can play this correctly, because I know we talked about this, especially a lot of the sentiment around where teams like Waybo especially have been coming up short. It has been Hong, and this is a big spot for him to show that he is in a new form here in Split 2, because he's going to have to be pivotal for all these engages for Waybo in my mind.
Yeah, EDG have put themselves on a timer. They're saying, look, if at 20 minutes you do not have an overwhelming gold lead, we are going to smash you with our strong side lanes and the ability to outrange you and demolish structures. I need to see Waybo with a very strong early game. Otherwise, it's a potential upset on our hands.
And we'll have to see here as we're getting set to go to the Rift here. I am a better fan of EDG being able, just kind of from an ease of execution and pressure on this certain comp, right? You have 2 clear engage lines. You're going to just rely on Xiaohao and Wink to play really aggressive to set up these engages. So you could set up for a lot of side potential, playing into those strong lanes as well.
I have bad news for you. We have to throw it to a short break. Sorry to everybody. We'll be right back with the gameplay. We need to be able to fix up our stream very momentarily. We're going to send it to a short break, and when we're back, we'll have it with game number 1 between EDG and Waybo.
Appreciate everybody's patience as we get through the tech delay, and we apologize for the fact that we are jumping in to the middle of Game 4 here. But luckily we haven't missed too much on the Rift just yet. As I say that, though, I thought Xiaohao was potentially looking at a gank here. Breathe is really toying with potentially in this ward down into the river, but he will avoid the gank, so I'll break down everything we missed here, because I know you always have an eye for those finite details.
You know, alongside the fact that the first 3 minutes didn't really get to see all that much, there's a little bit of action. Seems like Breathe lost his flash very early on, so hopefully that doesn't end up kind of biting him. This Gwen matchup is particularly very difficult, and like we said coming out of draft, if this game does go later, if EDG are able to secure early grubs, that is something that's going to potentially be very back-breaking for this team, as they're going to have to deal with the fact that these two potent side laners in the Yone and the Gwen are going to cause so many issues and are still incredible team fighters.
Looking on for some proactivity, as we mentioned from draft, with Waybo. Looking to especially do that through Tian on this very powerful skirmishing Xin Zhao. Definitely brings a lot more power, especially pre-6, than this Sejuani will. Do see that the grubs are coming up about 45 seconds. That should be the first point for Weibo to really try to flex their muscles over those scaling threads you're talking about, Alk.
We're already seeing, so ZDZ is going to recall here. Xiaohao is on the top side of the map, and we're starting to get our supports roaming on towards the top side here for these grubs 30 seconds before this has started. And can already see EDG, I love what On is doing. He's getting right into the face of Light. He's pushing in this wave, and then he can drop into Fog of War to potentially threaten a numbers advantage for his team.
His way up that river, but further up the creek. Especially with a fight already breaking out here. Xiaohao does aggressively position himself, try and punish Hong for hanging out in this lane. On does make himself known to be on the mid wave, throws one of those bombs out, which does mean EDG are going to have a pretty clear man advantage for these set of grubs. Curious how aggressive Weibo really want to get to try and stop the 3 grub stack, as Hong is going to immediately dive into the Grand Entrance, cancel out the Fate Sealed. Between Rules was used, Flash has to come down as well, as Tian nearly finds that kill, and all of a sudden Weibo can now look a lot more competitive for these grubs. Xiaohao is going to have to back off and give at least one of them over.
Well, I'm still going to like this trade for the time being. Like we just said, I think EDG may have had a mis-execution in the mid lane from Angel, but you think about what was gained on the opposite side there. I mean, they were able to grab 2 grubs for EDG. I think the biggest winner out of this is the fact that they did have to sacrifice some of their carries here, as not only does Angel continue to go down in this laning phase, On also had to give him a full wave versus Light.
Ooh. ZDZ showing the might of the Gwen. One of the most feared B1 picks currently in the LPL here. All trying to set up Xiaohao for a potential dive, as he does take over to level 6, but has a really well-placed pink ward that might just save Breathe here. His flash is available. He's not backing off the turret, so I wonder if Xiaohao might just pull the trigger here, but Xiaohu is waiting not far away. This could be a double trap being set, as Breathe now becomes the one baiting in EDG. Gonna dash back in. Glacial Prison still gonna land despite the dash. Clean dive from Xiaohao. Gives first blood over to EDG, but Xiaohu is hunting, trying to find a trade kill. Good dodge from Xiaohao, though. Keeping himself alive. Gets the stun back down, and Xiaohu will find the trade, but at a cost. EDG with another impressive early start to a game.
This Gwen is now 1,500 gold up. Not only is she going to have half a level up on her lane opponent, those 2 kills and the 2 plates. Massive advantage for EDG's top side here, with that play going into their advantage. I thought that's pretty risky. Yes, Xiaohu is able to grab the kill onto Xiaohao, but he has no ultimate during all of that play, so definitely cutting himself off and giving back some of the lead that he was trying to have over Angel.
All that time, like you called out a bit, Angel gets all of the time in the world with this mid wave, gets himself a solo plate, crashes a couple of waves in here. But as you called out, nearly 1,500 gold to ZDZ as we get to see the fancy footwork from the boar being piloted by Xiaohao.
This first part of the dive is great, and while it's unfortunate that Xiaohao takes a little too much damage from Aurora passive, I love that we got to see, talking about this from draft, the combo with the melees with Sejuani, the fact that ZDZ gets both of these kills It was a very tight timer, similar to the grubs there. We needed to see EDG kind of fire immediately onto the grubs, and they ended up making a pretty good play off of it.
Now looking forward here, that sort of ticking time bomb that you mentioned, Alk. The 20-minute mark was the one you pointed out, but now does that feel a bit exacerbated that maybe Waybo have to be even more proactive than we thought they'd have to be in these early frames from draft?
We cannot get even more aggressive than we already are, unfortunately. They did make a trade during that top lane dive. It was the Dragon. Breathe has the ultimate and the flash. Wink no level 6 here does make this a little difficult, and you look at what they're losing. They're losing positioning on the mid wave. There is a grub in 50 seconds, so I think what they might be trying to prioritize is a few more turrets or a few more of these plates, maybe get a recall in from ZDZ to be that much more powerful, but only now are EDG really opening, and we're kind of seeing Breathe recognize, hey, they are all missing. I feel like something's going on. So
I actually think we saw the observers toggle the fog there. Breathe, I think he might have spotted the jungle pet barely outside of the brush to avoid this dive. But we already got another dive brood on the other side. Angel uses the spirit form. Fate Seal does buy him space, but he gets away from his turret. Q3 dashes back. Turret aggro doing a ton for EDG's mid laner. Xiaohu's taking up way too much of the turret. How is Angel alive? He's going to try and TP out. Hog going to cancel it. Tian going to flash over the wall, so they get the kill. But that was far from clean for Waybo.
Okay, I want to give Angel his flowers there, as he has been, I think, one of the members of this team mechanically not up to snuff in some of the fights. That right there was a masterclass in the Yone. Great job from him. He does end up losing his teleport, but it turns into a first brick for this Gwen. So much gold, and now the potential for 5 grubs with a team that has a fed Gwen and this Ziggs. I think EDG are in a fantastic spot going up against Waybo here.
That alternate universe you talked about, all for EDG could have maybe been at the potential top of Group A. A lot of their games to start that discourse looked a lot like this, and you can already see just, you know, you can mention it as synergy, but the different level of approach to these games, and we talked about it with so many teams from Split 1, when they exited, could we see them step up and kick into a different gear, especially with the stakes heightened for your season potentially ending after this split? EDG have certainly answered the call so far in gameplay, and now just comes down to results-based analysis. How can you push this lead and find a coveted win?
5 grubs, you still have 3.5 minutes before these grubs, or 2.5 minutes before these grubs or these plates are going to fall off. Who on Waybo is going to be able to deal with Gwen in a side lane? Now with Ziggs, they're going to take this turret. They've already TP'd multiple members over here, so EDG are making a strong-armed play for this next Dragon. Such a good opener coming in from EDG. Again, so many years now where they've kind of fallen off on the wayside from the top of the bracket.
Whoa, ZDZ
just getting some damage.
Yeah, he's getting aggressive here. Forces Tian took completely out of his jungle with the Glacial Prison with the accelerated itemization of the Gwen. Nearly knocks Tian down. He has to commit the Crescent Guard. Got some more ultimates flying on out here as Light does commit the Chains of Corruption. Hung gets a big knock-up. Solar Flare immediately cleansed by Light. Between Worlds is going to trap EDG in, and maybe they just bit off a little more they could chew. Inferno Bomb comes back down from On. Angel shows up to our party a bit late, holding on to that Fate Sealed, but won't commit it. So Waybo aren't going to let EDG just push them around everywhere on the map.
Big mistake missing out on some of those needleworks does slow down the game in favor of Waybo, and also Breathe slowly starting to chip away. He got a few plates and a few waves to himself there, and with Gwen moving away from the bottom side of the map, we are expecting for Waybo to now take this Dragon. Great response from them, but a bit of an overforce coming in from EDG.
Does really stunt a lot of their play towards that Dragon, like you talked about, trying to overload towards that bot side. The kill is a nice spot for Waybo, but they're going to grab the second Drake. So despite all the scaling and ticking time bomb conversations we do have for Waybo, they are steadily tracking towards what will potentially be a Dragon Soul here, as a Mountain one as well. Very pivotal also just to make sure the EDG don't grab that one, because Mountain Soul is a death sentence for champions like Lethality Varus.
Yeah, I will, you know, kind of caveat that I think out of the souls they could have gotten, the fact that the first 2 dragons are Hextech and Infernal are pretty unfortunate.
Stinks.
They would have really appreciated being able to have that extra burst potential that comes with the soul for either of these. But a Mountain Soul, the combat stats that does allow, if you can grab that shield, is nice. We'll see if Weibo are able to grab that, because that is one way that they can keep themselves relevant with the draft. Tian on the flank, but Wink is here.
Yeah. There we go, public execution. Angel gonna have to go back to that spirit form at some point, but he's gonna use all of his dashes to create enough space. And Hong is there to at least make sure Tian can't dash on top of him. The valiant support of EDG, bodyguarding as always, but will it end up costing him his life? No, it's just more ultimates off the board here, so EDG not really gonna be able to be as aggressive on the map here without Glacial Prison, Fate Sealed, or Solar Flare for the next minute or so.
Right, so gold going missing, as EDG are trying to focus on, can we protect Angel and make sure that he's able to grab his far and keep even with Xiaohu. Now we have what I think is going to be the most important objective for the next 5 minutes here, is going to be this Herald spawning in a minute and a half. A team with having all, again, with this Ziggs, if EDG are able to grab it alongside those Grubs, they can very easily blow open this game and explode to, I think, a very massive gold lead. Whereas for Waybo, being able to get this Rift Herald stalls the game out and at least gets you closer to that Dragon stacking soul.
Love to see Weibo try and flex some of their pick potential in this composition with these ultimate advantages coming across here. Light with that Chains of Corruption, you've got the Quickness Charms, you've got Between Worlds to really lock EDG into place, and they've already shown a bit of a predisponence for over-aggressing into the Weibo jungle here. So they're already marking that Rift Herald that you called out so eloquently there, Alk, and Wink is at least trying to keep some vision in control of EDG, but there really isn't a world where they can compete here. Don't have any waves pushing in their favor as well, so should be a spot for Weibo to try and open more of the map up with good old Shelly.
Something that Weibo tend to do a lot is play so much through their solo lanes. This time around with Breathe being behind, it seems like the focus for Weibo is protecting Xiaohu. We'll see, as you can see on the minimap right now, Hong on the top side of the map getting vision, getting wards to protect his mid laner so that they can get these waves. Same thing usually by placing Light in the mid lane, leveraging the fact that the Varus is so safe and so proficient at clearing minion waves that he can just say, look, I'm clearing, and then immediately I can drop into Fog of War. And a big item spike power coming through for Weibo in a few minutes time with what looks to be a second and third item lethality from this Varus. EDG under no contest are just going to grab the Herald.
I mean, you called it out as a coveted objective on the map to really advance this next phase of the game, and really intriguing to see that Weibo, the team we pushed as the ones that need to be more aggressive in this spot compositionally, but also just knowing this matchup. Weibo are the more favored team, known for a lot of aggressive play style. To see them slow down like this is a bit perplexing, knowing everything staked into this one singular game.
Well, when we did see them in the tournament, just a few days ago, it was when EDG, first 15 minutes, they win a 2v2 on the bottom side. Xiaohao was actually reinforcing the bot lane to try to find the 2v2 kills. And when that was actually occurring, there was a moment where EDG had a massive enough advantage that they could potentially have continued to further that and have the potential to win that game. But Weibo made really clutch team fights. Tian was on top of it when it came to smiting the objective and making sure that he had that for his team. So that is going to be where I am looking for EDG to have improved in those last 4 days. Can they make sure that they're calling and setting up objectives correctly? Can they mark the right targets at the right time? And that is going to be, I think, the big difference changer between them potentially going, as a losing the expected match against Weibo and making upsets happen and pushing for a second seed.
And to accomplish that goal, if we take a look at some of these item breakpoints that are starting to come through, you can see some clear advantages for EDG when it comes to this side laning. The fact that Angel already has his Blade of the Ruined King done makes him a very good 1v1 champion from his kit. And ZDZ is not too far away from this Nashor's Tooth that's likely to come through here. The side lane threats can really stretch Weibo thin, but for now we're just going to see Shelly crack onto this mid-tier 1 turret. Nearly does drop it down, but does allow for EDG to set up around this Mountain Drake that they really need to stop Weibo from grabbing.
I think they need to take control of this bottom side river ramp. As long as you have access to that, just escort your Ziggs in, satchel bomb this turret, and call it a night. This one ward on is providing a lot of information. Breathe is here, and so what Weibo will look to do after this play is probably look to teleport after they've found something here, getting a little bit of damage onto Angel, but all of the carries are nowhere near this dragon right now for Weibo.
Yeah, Weibo have done a really good job at separating the solo lanes from the rest of EDG. This Gwen and Yone are the pivotal start points and finishing points for EDG's composition as they're currently designed, but instead they're allowing for this these battle lines to be drawn across the river here. Dragon slowly getting taken down. You can see Angel and ZDZ both setting up camp to try and go for flanks as Angel's going to jump in with that spear form onto Tian. Xiaohu is waiting for him to return to go for 1v1 of his own. There the quickness comes out from Hong as he does get jumped on by ZDZ, but the Rakan is really slippery. Stun still lands. He has to quit the flash away from the Zenith Blade. So Key Summoner going to come off of Weibo's side. Angel very low on the HP, and we're getting one of those 50-50 smite fights that you were talking about here, but it's just EDG that are getting bullied out of this pit. Weibo are unrelenting in their quest for this Mountain Drake, and they're going to pick it up. Secured by Tian, and no reason to fight any further.
That's a tough fight there for EDG. I didn't like the positioning on it, and now Weibo, they get access to mid first, they can go for these resets, and when they hit base, they're very easily going to be able to teleport to whatever lane they feel like they can push. As we get a replay of this, Angel getting some damage onto Tian is nice, but this solar flare missing, and there was a flank here from Z2Z to try to reposition, but too many ultimates have now gone missing. The needlework, the first cast of it doesn't land. The Sejuani ult doesn't land. So many skill shots missing from EDG that now this fight is incredibly difficult, and Xiaohu almost veritably secures his objective for the team with this Between Worlds.
There was a lot of missed ultimates in that fight. Sorry to call out my fellow AD carry, Light, but that Chains of Corruption, maybe one of the most missed skill shots when it comes to ultimates in the game of League of Legends, but Mountain Soul now seems to be a big pressure point for EDG to deal with. They are starting to get some move with this Ziggs here, those satchel charges, and knocking down a mid-1 turret. That should really help to open up the map here and allow EDG to try and set up for this Octocon, as we do get a ruinous one for our first game of the second round of Group A.
The fact that they were able to grab the top tier one at first and then continue their control definitely helped them already put vision into the top side, so getting rid of this mid-tier one does make it easier for EDG to kind of just say, hey, look, we can give up some of the mid waves so that we can play for objectives first, as that turret can kind of stand there and clear at least one of the minion waves before Weibo are looking to punish. So from this point, Weibo, this feels like a really big inflection point. In draft, I had called out that at 20 minutes, you need to have an overwhelming gold advantage. But here with 3 dragons, in the next 3 minutes, we will have to decide whether Weibo will have a free Mountain Soul, or if they're going to have to potentially, you know, have that delayed and potentially look down the barrel of seeing 3 item Ziggs and a Gwen.
It's a really big point to test the decision-making of Weibo, a team that has so much veterancy across its roster. A team that we talked about coming into today, highlighting their matchup against BLG. But for now, EDG is definitely making this a contest, as they're going to teleport in Angel. Looking for Tian, who's trying to get back to cover his top laner. Wasn't ready for Xiaohao to be waiting up ahead of him, so let's flash out of the Xin Zhao, and this should be EDG taking a pretty big command of the map. It's going to be all tier 1 turrets knocked down with ease.
And how much more can they get from this? Xiaohu does have TP. He's going to get this mid-tier 1 with no one contesting him. You already see that through mid lane, Angel is cutting through the jungle after clearing this mid lane. And how much more can EDG get? Because they are starting to give up some on the top side. And right now, I would like to see them put a little bit more priority to not only stopping Xiaohu, but potentially setting up for that. But as you can see, visions galore light up Weibo's side of the jungle. And they are just preemptively putting themselves in a good spot so that this dragon in a minute and a half's time is going to be at least coming in with more information for Edward Gaming.
It's allowing them to buy more time to continue to play this strong side lane threat. We talked about ZDZ already having access to those 2 items. He gets the Nashor's Tooth done. Angel's not going to be far behind him once he takes this next reset. So 2 items on these very powerful scaling solo lanes is allowing EDG to play their style of game and force Weibo to answer them top, bottom lane constantly win. Like you mentioned, the Dragon's up in a minute 15. Baron is only 30 seconds behind it, so this is going to be a map state where you have Otacon, Baron, and a Soul Point Dragon to play for.
Tian.
Unless EDG look for the fight now. There's a TP coming on the top side. There's the stuns getting chained together. The Crescent Guard, the Solar Flare, everything sectioning Tian off away from his team. He's trying to chase down a desperate kill, but the pick has been found. EDG sprung the trap and find themselves a very critical pick.
And they have Gwen. I wouldn't be surprised to see them on a rip open an Otacon with Tian down. 40 seconds means that he will not be alive when the rest of the team is already set up on the Dragon. Great find from EDG. And I wonder how much more, because, I mean, we're kind of looking at it. Big item power spikes for me are going to be the Zhonya's Hourglass, or the Seeker's Arm Guard, I should say, that is in currently ZDZ's inventory. That is going to be a make or break item activation for him in these fights. If he can get in, use the mist, have the ability to kind of cause chaos in the backline for Waybo. I want to see how Waybo are going to set up. What lanes are they going to be looking to push out first? And I mean, they need some cheap combat power. It seems like we're already getting some of those tier 3 boots enchanted.
Xiaohu gonna teleport into this pink ward to try and just put up a fight here on the Vision Wars for this Dragon. Xiaohao, though, getting a flank done with ZDZ between worlds, having to use defensively. It's a key ultimate out here for Waybo, and with them being in control of the Dragon stacking, I think that alone, yeah, is just gonna push them off of this Dragon. So EDG back to making the smarter moves on the map here. And they're going to shut off a pretty big win con for Waybo.
If EDG really wants to, On can just throw a couple of ultimates and just get rid of minion waves, start clearing the opposite side. Waybo maybe feeling a bit of desperation. The pings are going out. EDG want to try to push their advantage on the map, and Waybo going for the Otacon. This will give them so many blood roses and try to spike them back in power against the EXP and Adaptive Force.
Yeah, but their mid and bot waves are not in favor of this play. This is going to cost them likely 2 tier 2 turrets. At the very least, this bottom one that ZDZ and Angel are already whacking away at. EDG maybe not going to greed for this mid tier 2 turret. Don't want to give away a threat of a potential Baron player. Maybe they'll look to potentially wrap on these resets.
They're too late.
A lot of pings going down to that mid tier 2 wave. Yeah, I think they just had to go for this tier 2 turret, especially with the Zig Satchel charge.
If they wanted to contest Otacon, they would have had to wait a lot earlier. Again, you have 5 grubs. It is so easy. They still throw down the satchel.
They still get it.
That is an insane amount of blood roses. It went from like 5 and 3 to 40. You can already see some of the experience differentials. Tian up a level and a half on his counterpart. And while it's helpful for Breathe to try to stay ahead of ZDZ, this Gwen is 3,000 gold in front of their lane counterpart. And against a Baron, against any of these Elder objectives, it is such a meaningful amount of damage to be able to have max true damage versus them.
Waybo really trying to force potentially an issue here, look for a fight around this Baron River, or at least control it so they can threaten the Baron. Because that's what's really going to decide this game, it feels like. How credible can you be threatening the Purple Worm to pull ZDZ and Angel off of these side lanes? Because like you mentioned, it is 3 items now for ZDZ.
Oh my
he just
God.
does not, he's not in the same territory as Breathe, but EDG need to stay resolved.
Oh!
Don't need to commit into this river, because that's exactly what Weibo wants to do, and they're just going to stay true to their game plan.
Oh, that's a Chain of Corruptions missing on a completely
missed that.
blind target. They had a ward there and everything. Light not able to grab that. They're getting the teleport here. ZDZ wants
ZDZ.
some action.
He's got the teleport in, but doesn't find an angle. Flash, not instead of Ghost, so ZDZ can't chase down, and that really does kneecap EDG's ability to sort of contest a Baron play now. Angel is going to get his teleport up soon here, so maybe he can play towards that bot side wave, but you really want it to be ZDZ with how much further ahead he is compared to his lane counterpart.
That is a pretty big waste, especially the fact that they couldn't get anything, but they are also corralling Waybo around this mid lane wave. Waybo are going to be
Solar
forced
Flare
out.
finds
ZDZ.
nothing. ZDZ, is he just getting sold out by Xiaohu right now? The charm comes across. That is a huge pick for Waybo. They've knocked down the raid boss Gwen, and that should make it a pretty immediate Baron angle.
That's a shutdown going over to the Aurora. Almost level 15 now, and like you were saying, going for the Baron, you have to imagine Waybo, they have so many extra combat stats right now, not only with tier 3 boots potentially upgraded on some of their members, but the Otacon giving increased rewards from epic monsters. So 3 dragons in their back pocket, they'll have a Baron buff that potentially runs over the timer of this dragon. Can EDG mount a comeback in this situation where they were ahead so much?
They're going to have to do without critical abilities there. No Glacial Burst and no Solar Flare, so how do you get in? Angel's going to try and create an avenue with the Baron damage. Tian is the one that has to flash out, including Xiaohu. So right when we thought Weibo had an angle to break this game open, we return to that same stalemate and buy time for ZZ to return to the Rift.
Jeez, so tough. We get a replay of what exactly happened here. This was, you know, watching our 2 solo lanes of EDG sit down. I wanted to have them both corral into this mid lane, sit in Fog of War, and let their team force, but ZDZ walks straight into a full combo of Xiaohu on this Aurora, and then afterwards they're just able to snap right onto this champion. And while it does take some of their ultimates, you can already see that for Weibo, they have to overinvest just to kill 1 member. We've already seen some of these team fights go the way of Weibo Gaming. Can they make more of them appear, leading behind the charge of their legendary star mid laner?
I'm glad you pointed it out, because in the most desperate times for Weibo, they are always going to turn to Xiaohu, his
the general
understanding of the game, the general, the leader of this squad. And now this Aurora really does have the capabilities to threaten either of these solo lanes. Obviously, getting an enemy to walk right into your entire combo is going to help, but the Aurora has been a pivotal champion for him, that he has a very high win rate, especially so far in 2025. So we'll watch for Xiaohu to see how he can impact these fights. Doesn't have the flash, but does have the Between Worlds available as we're setting up around this dragon. Another soul point secure potentially in about a matter of seconds.
Every single fight from here on out without Weibo securing this dragon is going to be a very, very tightly contested one between these 2 teams. Angel is tending to the mid wave. See how much more he's able to grab. He's going to join the rest of his team, and I think EDG are a little too segmented. Wink no longer in the pit. Angel on and Xiaohao sitting in the top side of this river. They're going to try and reconnect. I want to watch where not only ZDZ are, but where is Breathe. With that ultimate, that public execution, you can dive right into the back line.
I would have rather them maybe played more towards that midway, but instead EDG are going back to something that's burned them so far in Split 2, trying to 50-50 on these major objectives. Tian has already stolen away some big dragons away from Xiaohao. EDG know it. The dragon being tended to very cautiously, below 3,500. The Chains of Corruption gonna land onto Wing, not finding anybody else. Inferno Bomb comes across. Tian is very, very low, but he goes in, steals it, secures Mountain Soul for Weibo Gaming, and now they can look to just pick off the stragglers. Flashes will not save you from the might of Breathe and Xiaohu as Weibo Gaming explode in the very first big fight of the game to find a clean sweep of kills across the board.
And they might even just go to Baron after this. EDG collapse in the moment that they needed to come together and help their jungler secure the dragon. It's a mid-tier 1 falling. They're trying to delay the recall of On. He'll get away safely, but at what cost? EDG looked all over the map there in that fight, and I don't know what to say. The team fighting has not looked all that clean, especially for our topside duo, ZDZ and Xiaohao, not being able to connect in this fight. As we jump into the replay, my eyes again on these 2 solo laners. Xiaohu on the bottom side of the map. They're trying to make this play, but we're not seeing Gwen reinforce with the rest of the team. Hong now gets to come in and kind of delay this back line. The fact that Tian gets that smite is so legendary and back-breaking for Edward Gaming.
And then it's all bets are off. You can see how many flashes were burned in a matter of 10 seconds. Especially some, like we mentioned, without flashes, we're going to have to rely on the satchel charge to keep himself safe as that critical scaling member. But Weibo can really exert their will across the rift. They still have that XP advantage. They're starting to barrel these waves into these remaining tier 2 turrets. It's important to mention, though, Alk, that at this point in the game, from draft, as we just see on their Glacial Prison whiff for Xiaohao, we felt like EDG at these item breakpoints would be the more threatening team, but not with the team fighting they've had so far.
No, it has not been good. And potentially ZDZ fall. Oh my god, Angel just barely doesn't go down.
Hong at least keeping Xiaohao at bay, but all of that poke was just to get these turrets down. So the Baron already cashing in pretty heavily for Weibo Gaming. Grab a top and mid tier 2 turret, but they're looking for more here. They've got the waves to support it. Tian and Breathe are going to section off to go for a top tier 3, but look at the play from EDG. They're going to cut off the other side of the Serpent's head. It's Angel going in with a Fate Seal. Xiaohao steps around it somehow. The General of Waybo avoids the engage and sets up Breathe to just run amok in the backline. Angel down first. CDC needs to go huge with this Gwen, trying to heal through all the damage, but he can't do it through the full might of Weibo Gaming. It took 2 fights to do it, but Waybo are going to find themselves the 3-1 to start off the second round robin of Group B.
Xiaohu saw the calendar. He says, oh, it's only March? Well, guess what? I can still be the spring tiger here for the team. Weibo are going to take a back-breaking win up against EDG, and like you said, see themselves 3-1 here in Group A.
It's another what-if scenario, it feels like, Ulk.
Oh, man.
Your alternate universe, I mean, we got to go back to it. Is there an alternate universe where EDG are 4-0 in your mind in this group now?
Not anymore. I think we're just straight up snapping that one out of the timelines, guys. That one is getting plucked and put away straight into the garbage. It sucks because, again, such an early game advantage garnered by EDG. ZDZ had 2,000 gold over his lane counterpart for the entire game and was unable to transfer that into a win. It's going to be something that I think haunts this team as we go forward, and I want to continue to see what EDG are going to iterate on. I mean, Weibo, I know we kind of avoided talking about this team for a pretty long time in that game with how it was looking, but Xiaohu with 100% kill participation, really leading from the front as this Aurora, like you had noted, a standout and breakout champion for this guy.
Really impressive. It is important to remember, though, for Weibo, they're not going to be able to rely on Xiaohu to just bail them out of weaker early games when it comes to some of the opponents they're going to be looking at. We'll talk more about who they're playing next in this group. But now, Ulk, looking at this group picture, we came in today talking about how this is put up or shut up time. I think now with this win specifically, we do clearly have first and second versus third and fourth when you look at these this Group A bunch of teams.
Yeah, barring some upsets, it's not completely locked up, but if this continues to go as we see it, Weibo and BLG are looking to take easy buys into Group Ascend, and EDG are looking to be our third place team. It all comes down to their matchups later on today. The rest of this group will be played concurrently, just all back-to-back, so I'm very scared for them. It's so weird to just see, you know, you have the scaling advantage, you get off to an early start. You would have thought they would be able to close that one out, but I mean, look, Xiaohu's like, you guys may have left the roster to ZDZ and Xiaohao, but I still own you guys, okay? There's a reason we got Tarzan and Breathe coming on through in summer.
That's a good shout, I can't lie. And what really stings even further for EDG is, you know, we've had our fair share of draft gap games in the LPL already so far. A couple playoff games are coming to mind, but this was a really good draft, especially for the meta. I mean, the Gwen win rate right now in Split 2 is really high. The Sejuani Yone ability is really, really potent. Outside of maybe getting on the Ezreal instead of the Ziggs, I felt like this was one of the better EDG drafts we've seen in 2025.
Yeah, then they did nothing with it. I hate to say it.
That's what stinks.
It's so sad to see the potential of this. And I will say, some criticism does need to be levied towards our top side. Again, Gwen having such a massive advantage, but never really able to kind of continue or push that forward or even generate it for the rest of the team. We saw them eventually start to move around the map, but it felt like EDG were more focused on, hey, when can we win a fight? When are we looking to try to go for an engage than necessarily playing the bigger picture and looking at the Summoner's Rift. So I don't know. I feel like with the levels of like experience that you do have on this team, again, Wink and On playing for such a long time, Angel just by himself, I think when you talk about the experience of this one player, I would think that, especially for someone who has, I think, typically in the past gone towards playing towards the rest of the map, I think that Angel's Talia has been perfect in years past. His Twisted Fate has always been a kind of a pocket pick. The fact that we're not really seeing him and the rest of the team be able to like really warp around this and play you have 5 grubs, 3-0 Gwen, and a Ziggs. This game should be wrapped up when you have that kind of lead.
You can win games with this very team composition, never 5v5. Like, never full-blown fighting. And, yeah, I'm glad you pointed out so well, Alk. We're not going to get too much of it in the replays because it's going to be a lot of the fights. But even in the most pristine moment for them to lean into strong side laning, we saw that hesitation. I keep going back, Alk, to the you called it during the moment. The real desperation play from Waybo, which was that Atacon, that should have costed them at least 2 tier 2 turrets, which it did, but maybe even more with the Ziggs, the Yone, the Grubs. Yeah. It's just EDG never committed to this side lane threat, and they just weren't synced enough on the team fighting to make enough of a difference against how their comp was designed.
I think it's so poetic as well for Weibo. When we looked at this team at the beginning of the year, they were early on one of the early adopters of like, hey, we actually don't need to fight immediately on Otacon spawn, or like we need to be constantly hovering it.
True.
They were one of the first teams in the LPL to actually drop the ruinous Otacon and instead try to trade out on the map and play, you know, getting all the structures and weakening them so that the next 2.5 minutes were not as useful. So I think it is so funny to see them in a game where they actually grab the Otacon, trade 2 turrets, and then you look at this game, they have a ruinous Otacon that gives them the bonuses to the Elder Dragons. They already have 3 dragons in their back pocket, so it was a really good example of Weibo, I think, being able to out-macro their opponents, and then come down to the clutch fights. Tian made it happen. Tian made those kinds of smites. Yeah. He got themselves the objectives. And then he gets to turn to his right, turn to his left, and be like, okay, cool, so I'm just going to get carried by Aurora. That's okay.
That's okay. When it's Xiaohu, why not? I'm glad you called out some of the split 1 tactics there with Otacon. My boy Alk is about as tapped into Weibo as Xiaohu's about to be tapped into this MVP pick. It's got to be him, by the way, in case anyone was wondering in chat.
Yeah, I was wondering what kind of champions we were going to get from Xiaohu coming into this year, because he's been able to fluctuate between playing some of his mages and then moving back into the marksman meta when we were seeing him on things like the Tristana. But here on the Aurora, he feels like the best new addition to his lineup, and it's been so impressive to see. I think he's one of the best Auroras early on into the year, and I'm glad to see him continue that trend.
For a man, the general synonymous with so many amazing picks in the mid lane, it is cool to see Xiaohu continuing to evolve his game. Aurora being one of his, I'm stamping it, his staple champions for the LPL. Very deserved MVP there for the general of Weibo Gaming as they move on to 3-1 in Group B as we start that second round robin. But you all know what's coming up next. 5 more games. The next one, you can already tell where we're going to be going here. Get to see the other 2 teams from Group A. So we're going to take a short intermission on the other side, take a look at BLG taking on Team WE. You won't want to miss it.